Welcome to another deep dive, everyone. This time we're going deeper than usual, I'd say, into the world of dyslexia.
Sounds good.
Using the guide, Understanding Dyslexia and How to Help Kids Who Have It, we're going to try to give you the info and strategies you need to support these awesome kids.
Yeah.
I think a lot of people listening probably either know a child with dyslexia or have it themselves.
Right.
But even if you're familiar with dyslexia, I think you're going to learn a lot today. I know I have.
Absolutely.
So,
so I think the first thing that's important is that we kind of move beyond that basic understanding of dyslexia. And, we think about it as just, reading difficulties.
Right. Like just seeing letters backwards.
Yeah. And it's so much more than that.
Right.
It's really about how the brain processes language sounds.
Yeah. It's like a neurological difference.
Exactly.
Not like a deficit. Right.
Right.
And this guide was saying that like up to 20% of kids may have dyslexia. That's like 1 in 5.
It's a lot.
Like that's huge. So that's like almost definitely someone in your kid's classroom.
Almost definitely.
And it's crazy because I was reading that there are actually studies that have shown like differences in brain activity.
Yes.
When people are reading.
Right.
And you can see that like in individuals with dyslexia, there's less activity in the left hemisphere, which is, the part of the brain that is involved with like, what was that word? Phonological processing, which is breaking down words into like individual sounds.
Yeah, that ability to hear the sounds in words and manipulate them.
Yes, exactly. So it's like, I don't know why, but like to me, it was just so amazing that there's like physical evidence
absolutely
in the brain. It's not just about learning styles. It's like no, this is like a neurological difference.
Yeah, and I think it's really validating for people with dyslexia to know.
Oh, absolutely.
That this isn't just something that that you can just try harder and it will go away.
Right.
It's an actual difference.
It's a real thing.
It's a real thing.
It's like how your brain is wired, right?
Yeah. And the thinking is now that while environmental factors play a role, research really suggests that there's a very strong genetic component.
So it's like their brains are literally organized differently.
Yes.
Like from the get-go.
Yeah, they're organized differently, and that doesn't mean that it's a bad thing.
Well, absolutely not.
In fact, a lot of people with dyslexia have exceptional strengths in other areas.
Like what?
Like visual spatial reasoning, problem solving, creativity.
Okay. Yeah.
So think about it. If your brain isn't effortlessly decoding symbols the way others do, you're going to come up with alternative strategies.
Yeah.
You're going to think outside the box to navigate the world.
And that actually makes so much sense because like even in the guide, they were saying that like Whoopi Goldberg and Steven Spielberg have dyslexia.
Yeah.
And like they're such masters of like
visual storytelling.
Exactly. So it's like their brains found like
different pathways.
Yes, to excel.
Exactly.
Amazing.
And it just shows that, the brain is plastic.
Yeah.
And it can find different ways to, achieve the same goal.
That's so cool. I love that. So I'm curious though, we keep talking about kids with dyslexia, but how do we even know, like how early can you spot it? This guide was talking about like signs even before kids start school.
Yeah, and that early recognition is so important because the earlier you can provide support, the better the outcomes for the child. So thinking beyond just letter reversals, a child who struggles with rhyming consistently has speech delays or has difficulty following multi-step directions.
Those are such simple things that you wouldn't necessarily think of.
Right, but they can be early indicators.
Wow.
Even something as simple as confusing left and right consistently could be a clue.
It's so funny. I am remembering now when I was a kid, I used to always trip over my words and rhyming was like impossible for me. And I managed, so it makes you wonder like how many kids are out there just silently struggling.
Absolutely. And the guide really emphasizes that because dyslexia is a spectrum.
Yeah.
Some children may develop coping mechanism.
Oh, that makes sense.
That kind of mask their difficulties, especially if they're really bright and motivated.
Right.
But that hidden struggle can really take a toll on their self-esteem.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
And even impact their social interactions.
Yeah, because if you're constantly struggling, it's going to impact your self-confidence and stuff.
Exactly.
So, okay, so we've got these early clues, but at what point does a parent say, okay, this is not just like a cute quirk, I need to talk to a professional?
Yeah.
Like, how is dyslexia actually diagnosed?
Yeah, so the guide explains that a formal diagnosis usually involves a comprehensive evaluation by a qualified professional,
Okay.
often a psychologist or an educational specialist, and they're going to look for a significant gap between a child's intellectual ability and their reading skills.
Gotcha.
Ruling out other factors like vision or hearing problems.
So it's kind of like a puzzle. You're trying to find the specific piece that isn't fitting.
Exactly.
Okay.
And this evaluation can be done through the school system or privately.
So there are options.
There are definitely options.
And I'm guessing, like, what age does this typically happen?
So while early intervention is ideal, formal assessments usually happen around 1st or 2nd grade when reading skills are more developed.
Okay.
Parents can request an evaluation from the school if they have concerns.
Yeah.
And there's always the option of seeking a private evaluation.
Gotcha. So it's really about advocating for the child.
Absolutely.
And getting them that support wherever it comes from.
Exactly.
Awesome. So let's say we have a diagnosis. Then what? Like, what are the most effective ways to help these kids? Because I know they have so much potential.
They do, and that's where the guide gets really practical, moving beyond traditional tutoring, which may not address that root cause.
Okay.
And it dives into specialized programs like the Wilson Reading System or the Orton-Gillingham approach.
Okay. And why are those different than just like regular tutoring?
Because they emphasize multisensory learning.
Ooh, multisensory. What does that mean? Like, give me an example. I learn best hands-on.
Imagine using sand trays to form letters, incorporating movement into spelling practice.
Okay.
Or even linking sounds to physical actions.
Oh, that's interesting.
So by engaging multiple senses, these programs create stronger neural pathways for learning.
Oh, so it's like you're kind of building in those connections that might be missing.
Exactly.
It's not just like rote memorization.
Exactly.
It's like a deeper understanding.
A deeper understanding of how language works.
Yeah, this is fascinating stuff.
It is, and the guide highlights the importance of early intervention. So the sooner these targeted programs are implemented, the better the outcomes for the child.
Okay, so it's best to do this early on, but I'm thinking, you know, some of these programs sound like, you know, they could be expensive, time intensive. What if a parent can't, you know, get their kid into one of those right away? What can they do at home in the meantime?
Yeah, and there are a lot of things that parents can do at home.
Okay, good.
Even simple things can make a huge difference.
Like what?
Like, the guide suggests focusing on reading for pleasure, not just accuracy. So audiobooks can be a lifesaver.
Oh, interesting.
Allowing them to enjoy stories without the decoding struggle.
Okay.
Celebrate those small wins.
Yeah.
Maybe they read a sentence fluently or spelled a tricky word correctly.
Right.
Those little victories build confidence.
That's such a good point, because it's so easy as a parent, you know, to get caught up in like
what they can't do.
Yes, exactly. But it's so important to focus on like, oh, they did this well.
Celebrate the progress.
Exactly.
No matter how small.
Love that.
And remember, traditional accommodations like extra time on tests, quiet workspace, those can really level the playing field. And the guide suggests exploring assistive technology too.
Okay, yeah, we touched on that earlier.
Things like text-to-speech software or dictation tools.
So it's really about finding what works best for that individual child.
It is.
So we've got this whole toolbox of strategies.
You do.
But, you know, before we dive into all of those, I want to go back to something you said earlier about like the social and emotional impact of dyslexia.
Yeah.
That feels like a huge piece of this.
Absolutely, and it's often overlooked.
Yeah.
So imagine the frustration of having thoughts and ideas that you can't easily express.
Totally.
Kids with dyslexia might struggle with word retrieval, have difficulty explaining themselves clearly, or feel like they're constantly being misunderstood.
Oh, that's got to be so hard, especially for little kids.
It is.
You know, when social connections are so important.
Exactly.
That's heartbreaking.
And this can lead to anxiety in social situations, avoidance of group activities, or even being mislabeled as shy or unmotivated. When the real issue is a communication barrier.
Wow. I never even thought about that.
So the guide stresses the importance of open communication, both at home and at school.
So, like, how do we as parents and educators create that safe space for these kids to, like, open up about their struggles without feeling ashamed or judged? Because let's face it, there's still a lot of stigma around learning differences.
Yeah. And that's where proactive education comes in.
Right.
So talk openly about dyslexia, not as a problem, but as a different way the brain processes information.
Right.
Help children understand it's not their fault.
Yeah.
And that their struggles don't define them. Right. Celebrate their unique strengths, whether it's in visual thinking, problem solving, or even humor.
Yeah.
Kids with dyslexia often develop amazing coping mechanisms.
Oh, that's a good point.
And resilience that we can all learn from.
I love that.
So it's really about shifting that whole mindset.
Yeah, like both for the child and for like the people around them, right?
Yes, exactly.
Creating this culture of acceptance and understanding.
Yes, and it can have a ripple effect,
Yeah.
leading to more inclusive classrooms, workplaces, and ultimately a society that values neurodiversity as a strength, not a weakness.
Man, this is so much more than just learning to read and spell. This is like fundamental.
Absolutely.
Like how we view learning, how we view intelligence.
Absolutely.
It's amazing. But okay, before we get too philosophical here, I do want to dive into some of those practical strategies. What are some things that parents and educators can do to help these kids navigate those challenges and celebrate their triumphs?
Let's explore that next. There's a lot we can unpack from the guide, but the key takeaway is this. With the right support and understanding, children with dyslexia can not only overcome their challenges, but also discover hidden talents and strengths that enrich our world in countless ways.
I love that, and I can't wait to dig into those strategies after the break. All right, let's open that toolbox of strategies. What are some things that parents and educators can do right now?
Well, the guide emphasizes a multifaceted approach. It's not just about academics. You're really supporting the whole child. Emotionally, socially, and creatively.
Wow.
So we touched on everyday accommodations earlier. And
yes, let's talk about those because I think sometimes accommodations get a bad rap.
Yeah.
Like it's giving someone a leg up or an unfair advantage.
Right.
But really, it's just about leveling the playing field, right?
It is. It's recognizing that different brains learn differently.
Yeah.
So things like providing extra time on tests, allowing for oral responses instead of written ones, or using audiobooks instead of traditional text. These aren't shortcuts.
Right.
They're really pathways to success for these kids.
I like that. Pathways to success. I like that a lot. Okay, what about assistive technology? I feel like, especially with all the tech now, that's got to be a game changer.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So think text-to-speech software, which can read aloud digital text,
Okay.
or speech-to-text dictation tools, which allow them to speak their thoughts instead of writing them. And these can be so empowering, especially for kids who struggle with the mechanics of reading and writing, but have a lot to say.
Right. It's like giving them a voice, literally, that they might not have had otherwise.
Yeah.
That's good. What about at home? Any like low-tech strategies parents can use?
The guide is full of them. So using color-coded folders or highlighters for organization,
Okay.
breaking down tasks into smaller steps, even incorporating movement into learning.
Okay.
Like having them jump for every letter while spelling a word.
I love that.
Make it fun and engaging.
Yeah, not just like a boring worksheet or something.
Exactly.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, and speaking of fun, the guide talks about the importance of letting kids with dyslexia read for pleasure, not just for practice. Can you talk about that? Like, why is that so important?
Because when reading becomes a battle, it really impacts their motivation and self-esteem.
Swiftly.
So let them choose books they're genuinely interested in. Even if they're below their reading level, audiobooks are fantastic for this.
Yeah.
It allows them to enjoy those complex stories without the decoding struggle.
Right, so the goal is to foster a love of reading,
Exactly.
not a fear of it.
Yes.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. So we've talked about a lot of these academic strategies, but I want to, again, circle back to the social emotional piece.
Yeah.
Because that feels so huge. How can we, as parents and educators, help these kids navigate, the social world when they're already facing all of these, internal challenges?
Well, I think open communication is key.
Okay.
Creating a safe space
Yeah.
where they feel comfortable sharing their struggles without fear of judgment. Encourage them to talk about their experiences.
Yeah.
To express their frustrations and to celebrate their victories.
It's about really listening to them, not just being like, oh, you'll get it eventually.
Exactly. It's about validating their feelings and letting them know that they're not alone.
Yeah.
And remember, dyslexia isn't a one-size-fits-all experience.
Right, of course.
Some kids might be outgoing and social,
Yeah.
while others might be more introverted.
Right.
The key is to understand their individual needs and provide support that's tailored to their personality and learning style.
This whole conversation is honestly making me rethink, how we even define success. Like maybe it's not just about grades and test scores,
right?
But it's about resilience, adaptability, and like finding your own unique path, you know?
Yeah, you're hitting on a key point here. The guide highlights the incredible strengths that often accompany dyslexia.
Yeah.
Things like out-of-the-box thinking, problem-solving skills, and a knack for visual and spatial reasoning.
Yeah, we talked about that a little earlier.
It's about recognizing and nurturing those strengths, not just focusing on the areas where they struggle.
So instead of seeing dyslexia as like a limitation, you can see it as like a different way of thinking.
Yes.
A different set of skills that can be like incredibly valuable in the right context.
Absolutely. Think about all the successful entrepreneurs, artists, and innovators who think differently, who see the world from a unique perspective.
Yeah.
Many of them have dyslexia. It's about changing the narrative from disability to different ability.
I love that. Different ability. That's awesome.
Yeah.
And if we start, valuing that neurodiversity as a society, like imagine the possibilities.
It's exciting to think about, isn't it?
Yeah.
We're moving towards a world that recognizes that there's no one right way to think or learn.
Yeah.
We need diverse minds to solve those complex problems, to innovate and to create.
So what are some practical ways to foster that shift in mindset? Like both at home and in like the wider community?
It starts with education. Talk about dyslexia openly. Share stories of successful individuals with dyslexia, challenge stereotypes and misconceptions.
So it's about like awareness, education, and advocacy, like those three things.
Absolutely.
Like making those small changes in, our language and behavior that can have a ripple effect.
Exactly. And remember, this isn't just about supporting kids with dyslexia. It's about creating a more inclusive and equitable world for everyone.
Yeah.
When we embrace neurodiversity, we all benefit.
I love that message. It's like we're all in this together, and by supporting each other's strengths and challenges, we can really create something amazing.
Yeah.
But okay, before we get too, carried away with our utopian vision here, I do want to come back down to earth for a minute.
Yeah.
Talk about something very specific, the actual diagnosis of dyslexia.
Oh.
We touched on it a little earlier, but I think it's worth exploring in more detail. What does that process actually look like?
You're right. It's an important piece of the puzzle.
Yeah.
And like we said, a formal diagnosis typically involves a comprehensive evaluation by a qualified professional.
Yeah.
Like an educational psychologist.
Okay.
Or a certified academic language therapist.
Okay, so this evaluation usually happens when, a child is struggling with reading or spelling. Like, what are some specific signs that would trigger a parent or a teacher to, seek an evaluation?
So it could be persistent difficulty with decoding words, recognizing letter sounds, or reading fluently.
Yeah.
They might have trouble with spelling, writing, or expressing themselves verbally.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's even more subtle, like difficulty rhyming, memorizing sequences, or following multi-step directions.
So it's not always like the classic image of like reversing letters or reading words backward. It can look a lot of different ways.
Exactly. And that's why it's important to look for those patterns, not just isolated incidents. So if a child is consistently struggling in these areas, even with extra help and support, it's worth considering an evaluation.
Okay. And who can initiate that evaluation? Is it always the parent, or can a teacher kind of, suggest it as well?
Both parents and teachers can play a role. If a teacher notices a child struggling, they can talk to the parents about their concerns and suggest further assessment.
Okay.
Parents can also reach out to the school or seek a private evaluation if they have concerns.
So it's really about that collaboration.
It is.
Communication.
Yes.
Between everyone involved in the child's life.
Exactly.
Yeah, that makes sense. So let's say a child has been diagnosed with dyslexia. Then what? What are the steps involved in creating like a support plan for them?
So that's where the expertise of the evaluator comes in. They're going to analyze the results of that assessment and work with the parents, the teachers, and the child themselves to develop a tailored plan that addresses their specific needs and strengths.
So it's not one size fits all.
No, not at all.
Each kid is going to have their own like unique
Absolutely.
set of challenges and strategies for success.
Exactly. So the plan might include recommendations for specific interventions like specialized reading programs, assistive technology, or accommodations in the classroom.
Yeah.
It might also include strategies for supporting their emotional well-being,
Okay.
fostering their strengths, and advocating for their needs.
This all sounds very collaborative. Like it's not just the experts, but it's the child and their family as well.
It absolutely should be. The child's voice is crucial in this process.
Right.
We need to understand their experiences, their frustrations, and their aspirations.
Yeah.
Parents are also essential partners,
Totally.
providing valuable insights into the child's strengths, challenges, and learning preferences.
It sounds like this approach is really all about like empowering the child.
Yes.
And giving them that sense of agency in like their own learning, right?
Absolutely. When children feel heard, understood, and supported, they're much more likely to engage with the learning process and achieve their full potential.
Totally. It's not just about like fixing a problem.
No.
It's about celebrating their unique way of thinking and helping them like thrive in a world that doesn't always get it.
Yeah.
Exactly. That doesn't always accommodate their differences.
Exactly.
That's such an important message. And it really ties back to that broader conversation about neurodiversity. It's not about making everyone fit in the same box.
Right.
It's about recognizing and valuing the incredible diversity of like the human mind.
Exactly. We need to move away from that idea of normal.
Yeah.
And embrace the fact that there are many different ways of thinking, learning, and experiencing the world.
Yeah, and when we do that, we open up a whole world of possibilities.
Absolutely.
Not just for people with dyslexia, but like for all of us.
I know.
That's a powerful thought. So, okay, we've talked about the diagnosis process. We've talked about, the importance of this collaborative approach and this like mindset shift. But I'm curious, what about those kids who haven't been diagnosed, but maybe they're struggling silently? What does the guide say for like parents and educators who are noticing these signs, but maybe aren't sure what to do next?
Yeah, that's a great question. And the guide emphasizes the importance of early intervention.
Okay.
So even before a formal diagnosis, there are steps you can take to support a child who might be showing signs of dyslexia.
Like what? Give me some action items, some things people can actually do.
Start by talking to the child's teacher.
Okay.
Share your observations and concerns. They might have noticed similar patterns in the classroom and can offer valuable insights.
So again, it's that open communication, collaboration from the start.
Right from the start.
Okay, love that. What else?
You can also start implementing some of the strategies we talked about earlier.
Okay.
Even without a formal diagnosis.
Like what kinds of things?
Things like reading aloud to them, focusing on phonics skills, using multisensory activities, and creating a positive and supportive learning environment.
So it's about creating that foundation of support and encouragement.
Exactly.
Regardless of whether there's a label or not. Okay, that makes sense. Anything else?
Yeah, and remember, you don't have to go through this alone.
Okay, good.
There are incredible resources available both online and in your local community.
Like what?
Organizations like the International Dyslexia Association or the Learning Disabilities Association of America offer valuable information, support groups, and connections to professionals who can help.
So it's about empowering yourself.
Yes.
With the knowledge.
Absolutely.
Connecting with others who understand.
Yes.
And advocating for that child's needs.
You got it. Early intervention is key.
Yeah.
And it's never too early to start building that network of support.
This has been so insightful. I feel like we've covered so much.
We have.
From understanding like the neurological basis of dyslexia to these really practical strategies to like how important a growth mindset is. This is amazing. But I'm sensing like there's more.
There is.
What else does the guide highlight? Like, what other things should we be thinking about?
One thing the guide emphasizes is the power of positive role models.
Okay.
Sharing stories of successful individuals who have dyslexia can be incredibly inspiring for children.
Oh, absolutely.
It shows them that their condition doesn't have to limit their potential.
Totally. It's like, you're not alone. There are people out there who have faced similar challenges and like done incredible things.
Exactly.
But I'm wondering, how do we go beyond just naming, famous people with dyslexia and really like dig into how they leveraged their unique thinking styles to achieve success? Because I think that's who the real inspiration is.
You're absolutely right. It's about going beyond the label and understanding how these individuals navigated their challenges, discovered their strengths, and ultimately used their different wiring to their advantage.
So let's take a specific example. The guide mentioned Steven Spielberg. Like, everybody knows he's a brilliant filmmaker.
Yes.
But how did his dyslexia actually shape his creative journey?
That's a fascinating question.
Yeah.
And Spielberg has talked openly about how his dyslexia made traditional schooling a struggle.
Right.
He was often bored and felt like he didn't fit in.
Okay.
But he found solace in storytelling, using his imagination to create worlds where he felt empowered and in control.
So it's like, instead of seeing dyslexia as this like negative thing, he channeled it into this like incredible creative outlet.
Exactly. And he's talked about how his difficulty with words made him more visually oriented, more attuned to nonverbal communication and the power of imagery.
Interesting.
And this visual strength became a hallmark of his filmmaking.
Totally, yeah.
You know, allowing him to create those captivating worlds that transport audiences to another realm.
That's amazing. It's like his dyslexia, in a way, shaped his artistic vision.
It did.
Which is so cool.
It's a reminder that our perceived weaknesses can often be our greatest strengths in disguise.
It's such a powerful message. And it's not just Spielberg.
Yeah.
There are tons of examples.
Countless examples.
Of people with dyslexia who have excelled in all different fields, right?
Yes. Art, design, architecture, music, entrepreneurship, you name it.
It's like they're wired for innovation.
They are. They often have a unique ability to see patterns, connect seemingly disparate ideas, and think outside the box.
But it makes you wonder, like, how many brilliant minds are out there, you know, that are being overlooked or underestimated because we're still stuck in this, like, narrow definition of intelligence.
It's a sobering thought, and it highlights the importance of changing that narrative around dyslexia and neurodiversity as a whole.
Totally.
We need to move beyond just labeling and start recognizing that incredible potential that lies within these different ways of thinking and learning.
It's not just about accommodation and support.
Right.
It's like a fundamental shift.
It is.
In how we view intelligence, creativity, success, like all of it.
You've got it. And that shift starts with awareness, education, and a willingness to challenge our own assumptions about what it means to be smart or capable.
This has been such a powerful conversation.
It has.
I feel like we're just, I don't know, scratching the surface here.
Yeah.
But I'm curious, what does the guide say? Like, for those of us who are trying to, you know, foster this growth mindset in kids with dyslexia, because it's one thing to like talk about celebrating their strengths, but how do we actually put that into practice?
That's where the rubber meets the road, right?
Yeah.
It's about moving beyond words and creating opportunities for these children to explore their passions, discover their talents, and experience success in areas that play to their strengths.
So finding those activities that light them up.
Absolutely, where they can shine and feel confident in their abilities.
Exactly.
So it might be visual arts, music, drama, sports, building, coding. The possibilities are endless.
Yeah, totally.
The key is to expose them to a variety of experiences and let them lead the way.
So it's not about forcing them into like, oh, you have dyslexia, you must be good at art.
Exactly. No.
Right. It's about like, let's try a bunch of different things.
Exactly.
And see what clicks.
See what clicks.
And it's not even just about finding that right activity. It's also about like how we frame those experiences.
Absolutely.
Like, how are we talking to them about it?
Yes, focus on their effort, their progress, their unique contributions.
Yeah.
Not just the end result.
So celebrating those small victories.
Exactly.
Not just like, did you win? Did you get an A?
Exactly. Celebrate the effort.
Yeah.
And remember, mistakes are part of the learning process.
That's worse, yeah.
Encourage them to embrace challenges, to try new things, and to learn from their setbacks. That's how resilience is built.
It's about fostering that growth mindset where they see challenges as like a good thing.
Yes.
Like opportunities for growth and learning, not as like
a threat.
Yeah, a threat to their self-worth.
Exactly.
And you know what? It's so important that we as parents and educators, like, we model that.
We do.
Right.
Absolutely. Let them see us embrace challenges, making mistakes, and learning from our experiences.
It's about showing them it's okay to not be perfect.
Exactly.
That struggling is part of life. And it's through those challenges that we grow.
You've summed it up beautifully.
I'm getting all like philosophical over here.
It's powerful stuff.
It is. And remember, the guide emphasized that every child with dyslexia is different.
Yes.
There's no one size fits all.
No.
The key is to be like observant, listen to their needs, and be flexible in our approach.
Be a detective.
Yes. I love that. Be a detective.
Observe, experiment.
Yes.
And adjust your strategies to find what works best for each individual child.
That's awesome. Okay, that was a journey.
It is a journey, not a destination.
Yeah.
There will be ups and downs.
Oh, for sure.
Moments of frustration and moments of triumph.
But with patience,
yes,
perseverance, and, believing in that child's potential.
Yes.
They can achieve amazing things.
They can. They absolutely can.
That is such an encouraging message. Like, I am walking away from this conversation feeling like hopeful.
Me too.
Which is great. It's a reminder that, like, with the right support, dyslexia doesn't have to be a barrier.
Right.
It can actually be like this catalyst for growth and creativity and success.
Absolutely. And the more we learn about dyslexia and neurodiversity, the more we realize that it's not about fixing a problem, but it's about embracing that incredible diversity of the human mind.
And creating a world where everyone can, like, be their best selves.
Exactly.
I love that vision.
Yeah.
Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground, but, I feel like there's always more to explore. What else does the guide offer for, those of us who are just, like, fascinated by dyslexia and neurodiversity and want to learn more?
It's a really exciting time to be exploring this topic, and the guide points to several promising areas for the future.
Okay, like what?
So, advances in brain imaging are giving us a clear picture of the neurological underpinnings of dyslexia.
So we're literally seeing what's happening in the brain.
We are, and this will pave the way for more targeted interventions and personalized learning approaches.
That's incredible. So we're moving beyond that, like one size fits all.
Exactly.
And really tailoring that support to each individual's, like, brain.
To their unique brain.
Wow, that's amazing. What else?
There's a growing focus on early identification and intervention.
Okay, yeah, we talked about that a little bit.
So the sooner we can identify those early markers of dyslexia, the sooner we can provide support and prevent those feelings of frustration and failure that can have a lasting impact.
Right, so we're shifting from, like, a reactive approach to, like,
a proactive approach.
Yes, exactly.
Catch it early before those negative self-beliefs take root.
I love that. That's awesome. Okay, what about technology? It feels like there's so much potential there.
There is. Assistive technology is constantly evolving, becoming more sophisticated and accessible. So we're seeing incredible tools that support reading, writing, organization, and even social communication.
Yeah.
And these tools aren't just for kids.
Right.
They can be game changers for adults with dyslexia as well.
Yeah, like even just those dictation tools we talked about.
Exactly.
Like imagine if you're someone who, struggles with writing, but you have all these brilliant ideas.
You have so much to say.
Yes. And you could just, like, speak them.
And it unlocks a whole new world of possibilities.
Yes, that's so cool. Okay, anything else exciting on the horizon?
Yeah, there's a growing movement to incorporate universal design for learning principles into education and the workplace.
Universal design. Okay, break that down for me. What does that mean?
This means designing environments and materials that are accessible to everyone, regardless of their learning style or ability.
So instead of, like, creating separate accommodations, we're designing it from the get-go.
From the ground up.
To be inclusive.
With inclusivity in mind.
Yeah, I love that. But it makes me wonder, like, okay, how do we advocate for that? Like, as individuals, I mean, it can feel so overwhelming to think about, like, tackling these big systemic issues,
You're right. It can feel daunting, but the guide emphasizes that even small actions can make a difference.
Okay.
So start by educating yourself and those around you about dyslexia and neurodiversity.
Yeah.
Challenge stereotypes and misconceptions whenever you encounter them.
So having those conversations, raising awareness, and, like, normalizing those differences.
Exactly.
Okay, cool.
And remember, you don't have to be an expert to advocate for change.
Yeah, good point.
Share your own experiences, connect with local organizations, and support initiatives that promote inclusivity and accessibility.
So finding your own unique way to contribute, whether it's through, educating people, advocacy, or just creating, like, a more welcoming and understanding environment, in your own little world.
You've captured it perfectly.
Awesome. I love that.
Every action, no matter how small, contributes to a larger movement towards a more inclusive and equitable world.
Okay, this has been incredible.
It has been a great conversation.
I feel like we, again, just barely scratched the surface.
Yeah.
But I'm feeling really good about this. I'm feeling hopeful.
Yeah.
What are like some final takeaways you want to leave our listeners with?
I'd say remember that dyslexia is not a limitation.
Yeah.
It's a different way of thinking.
Yeah.
And it's about recognizing and celebrating those incredible strengths and talents that often accompany dyslexia.
Yeah.
And creating a world where those strengths can flourish.
I love that. Shifting our perspectives from, deficit to difference.
Exactly.
Problem to potential. I love that.
And a reminder that we all have a role to play in creating a more inclusive and equitable world.
Yes.
Where everyone can thrive.
Thank you so much for joining me on this deep dive.
It's been a pleasure.
I feel like I've learned so much.
Me too.
And to our listener, remember, your voice matters.
It does.
Share your story, advocate for change.
Absolutely.
And celebrate the unique brilliance of every mind.
Beautifully said.
So I've talked about, how do we as individuals, how do we advocate for that? Like, it can feel so overwhelming to think about like tackling these big systemic issues. Where do you even begin?
Right. It can feel daunting. But the guide emphasizes that even small actions can make a difference.
Okay.
So start by educating yourself and those around you about dyslexia and neurodiversity.
Okay.
Challenge stereotypes and misconceptions whenever you encounter them.
So it's about like raising awareness.
Yes.
Having those conversations and normalizing those differences.
Okay, exactly.
Okay, cool.
And remember, you don't have to be an expert to advocate for change.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Share your own experiences, connect with local organizations, and support initiatives that promote inclusivity and accessibility.
So finding your own unique way to contribute.
Yes.
Whether it's through, educating people, advocacy, or just creating like a more welcoming and understanding environment, in your own little world.
You've captured it perfectly.
Awesome. I love it.
Every action, no matter how small, contributes to a larger movement towards a more inclusive and equitable world.
This has been incredible. I feel like we, again, just barely scratched the surface.
It has been a great conversation.
But I'm feeling really good about this.
Good.
I'm feeling hopeful.
Me too.
What are like some final takeaways you want to leave our listeners with? Like what's the big, what are the big things you want people to walk away with?
I'd say remember that dyslexia is not a limitation. It's a different way of thinking.
Yeah.
And it's about recognizing and celebrating those incredible strengths and talents that often accompany dyslexia.
Absolutely.
And creating a world where those strengths can flourish.
It's about, shifting our perspective.
Yes.
From deficit to difference. Problem to potential. I love that.
And a reminder that we all have a role to play in creating a more inclusive and equitable world.
Absolutely.
Where everyone can thrive.
I think that's the perfect place to end it. Thank you so much for joining me on this deep dive.
It's been a pleasure.
I feel like I've learned so much. And to our listener, remember, your voice matters.
It does.
Share your story, advocate for change.
Absolutely.
And celebrate the unique brilliance of every mind.
Beautifully said.